So Brandon Harris, you are owner operator of a company called Premier Fitness, located in Scottsdale, Arizona. One of the most well-known facilities for very high-profile athletes. A few of them, including we have UFC's current bantamweight champ Sugar Sean O'Malley, who trains with you.
Yeah.
2022 MLB MVP Paul Goldschmidt. AJ Pollock, World Series winner, just a few, but of course there's even more than that. So what's really interesting about you is these very high profile names trust you. And obviously what you're doing over there in Arizona and how you tap into your respective athletes, we talk about sort of the pressure of what they deal with and what you see from them in terms of not just on the performance side, but on the mental mindset side. Can you speak to that a little bit and what you do to work with that? Because I think for me, one of the things that's most fascinating is sports psychology. Because you can be the most athletic individual, but if you don't think that you are, you don't have the mindset to get you there, that you're your own biggest enemy.
Right. Yeah. At the highest level, the separation between someone that is winning a UFC title and a person that's not is so small. And at that level, all of these athletes, male and female, are so gifted athletically. They're so physically gifted that, from my perspective, the mental state, how they deal with stress, how they deal with fear, how they deal with their past, how they identify themselves, that is the biggest difference between the person that gets to the very top and the person that, say, has a really good career in their sport, but maybe they're just not quite there. I think your mindset is the most important piece of being an elite athlete and being an elite human, which is also important to me.
Yeah. How do you take someone like Sugar Sean, how do you take him to that elite level? Because no doubt he's incredibly talented. No doubt he's incredibly gifted and athletic. But he has a certain mindset, much like Conor McGregor, who just kind of goes in and knows that they're the best.
Yeah.
I certainly struggle with that. I have very bad anxiety, so I over prepare. And then I know the rest is left up to me to just like go do my thing. But how do you work? Because when we talked offline, that's something that you focus on. How do you help them? And also too, how can we help ourselves?
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm fortunate to be able to build these relationships with these athletes. So I get to know who they are and to see the whole picture. So I always think, like, what's the lowest hanging fruit? And sometimes that could be just basic breathing. Sometimes that could be integrating meditation. Sometimes it could be creating a nervous system that's more adaptable. What was cool with Sugar is that even though I started working with him when he was young, he'd already been doing a lot of this work. So he already had a head start. He'd already been doing introspective work. He'd already been meditating. He'd already been doing breath work. So he was already there. When I joined the team, it was like I just was able to enhance those particular pieces. With an athlete that hasn't been doing that, I think it depends on who they are and what are the gaps, maybe it's physiological gaps, what are the psychological gaps that need to be filled for them to be able to reach their potential. So it varies. But if we're speaking about Sean, he was already doing that work. He already valued it, which is part of what makes him so special, is he understands that stuff is important, and it's cool because it worked out. We just won the title. So yeah.
Obviously I know you because of Donnie.
Yep.
Donnie and I know each other because of Darren Waller,
Yep.
formerly of the Raiders when I was there. And obviously massive respect to how Darren has diversified his career.
Right.
And one of the things that Donnie and I talked about, who, recommended you as somebody that would be great to have on because of this work that you do with pro athletes, mindset, performance, and all of those things, is that he knows Darren when it's all said and done, when the career is over, he'll be good because he's worked on his attachment to being a pro athlete.
Right.
His attachment and his identity, which is something that I relate to in a sense, because I was so married to this, I'm on camera and I'm a broadcaster and I work in sports and I have access to all these people. And what happens is it can become a very unhealthy attachment, as though that is just who you are, right? So Darren, let's say career ends tomorrow. Donnie said, Darren's going to be good. What do you think in what you're seeing with pro athletes today, not necessarily maybe the guys you work with, but what do you think that the athlete today, the modern athlete, struggles with maybe the most?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I think an identity and attachment to a story that they've told themselves their whole lives. And the trick is that you can be very successful, and success, that's, how are we defining that, right? Success maybe for you was getting to a network, being on TV. And if everything is wrapped up into that, then what, right? What happens when it's gone? But you can be at the top and still be missing that self-reflection, that looking back at yourself and really, I think, moving towards things that you're afraid of and understanding yourself. So doing that work is so important for long-term success of the human and the athlete, but I also believe that it benefits them while they're competing, which I think gets missed, because everybody that's playing professional sports is gifted. They've been gifted with certain abilities that not all of us have. They put in work. They put in thousands of hours of work perfecting their skills. Like, you have to. And some people can get away with less. But again, I think when we're talking at the very, very top of the game, it's the same work that you and I would do as a human to be healthier, to be emotionally healthier, that will benefit them. So that to me is cool, is that you can be a killer, if you will, in a sport. You can have this attack mindset, but also do work on yourself that will benefit you outside of your sport and in your sport. I like to think of, we talked about this a little bit, but I think at the top, the relationship to fear is so important. And really what that is welcoming it, is accepting that everybody has fears. That's a human thing. That's an organism thing, right? We all have fear. The more we push it away, the stronger that gets, the more it hurts us. The more we accept it, the less it strangles us. And that to me that's doing that, that introspective work. That's looking back at your past, understanding your childhood. Doing that work is so important.
Yeah, and doing the work around the people that are contributing to your overall up-leveling. Meaning, when I discuss my relationship to fear, really what I'm understanding about myself as I've kind of gone through like a transformation, and feel really uncomfortable at times, is at the end of the day, it's a lack of trust for myself. So if I say the thing to somebody and I don't get the reaction that I want, depending on my relationship to fear or trusting for myself, I'll judge myself on that. And I think that's the same relationship to fear. Like, at the end of the day, it's a lack of trust that it'll all end up working out the way it's supposed to, right? Like, when we're so outcome oriented rather than process oriented, I think that shortchanges us in a way where we think that this is the goal, but like it could be even more dynamic than we ever imagined, right?
For sure, yeah. And again, the best of the best are really good at being present. The best of the best are really good at letting go of what is out of their control, because that's just wasted energy, and realizing that you want all of the energy that you possess to go towards whatever it is that you're doing in that moment. And if it's an athlete, you're competing. The baseball player, trying to hit a baseball. If you're doing an interview, it's being here right now. And again, I'll go back to sugar, which is what's so cool about him is he's so good at being present, and he's so good at not worrying about what is out of his control and focusing strictly on being in the moment, being right where he's at. And yeah, it's cool to watch. It's been a really highlight aspect of my career, watching him rise to the top, which has been cool.
Can you speak to a specific example where you saw Sugar just completely tune out the noise?
Yeah.
Was there, because that's what I mean by like having the right people in your orbit helps you up level yourself so much. Like now I'm at a place in my life where I'm so picky the energy I allow that I now feel confident that the people in my life get a better version of me because I'm so picky with the value of my time. Does that make sense? So like, because you have Sugar in your life, you're getting exposed to this like completely high level of presence that maybe not many people could tap into.
Yeah, and think about that sport. You're literally walking into an arena full of, well, you know, whatever, 30,000 people or whatever it is, and you're in a cage and it's a one-on-one fight. That's what's wild about MMA, is that the stakes in that sport are extremely high. You could get injured, you could get hurt. So not to take away from other sports, but I find MMA so fascinating because it is, you know, it's a one-on-one thing that you're extremely vulnerable. So in those moments, pushing away what you're afraid of is only going to make you more anxious, right? When you can accept it, you're more likely, it doesn't guarantee you're going to win, but you're more likely to tap into your flow state, to tap into your higher self. And so, you know, an example of this is, so 2 fights ago, we were in Abu Dhabi, and that was a big step up for Shug in competition. He's fighting Peter Yan, who was the previous bantamweight champion. He's this Russian guy. He's this, you know, scary mixed martial artist. And I'm a big believer that you have to be authentic to yourself, right? So different people look different. Some people perform better when they're very calm. Some people perform better. Their energy vibrates at a different frequency. So knowing yourself is a huge piece of tapping into that elite performance, not trying to be somebody else. And I've seen people do it different ways. But we're at that fight, and it's, you know, there's a ton of pressure. This is a big step up, and we're in the back. And I remember thinking to myself, like, Sugar is too calm. His nervous system, his state, it's his vibrational frequency, if you will, is too low. And I'm sitting there as a coach thinking, like, do I step in? And I didn't. And, you know, it was like a mental note to myself. I'm like, all right, like, if he's a little flat in this performance, like, this is something we need to change. But I think my instinct was that he was good, because he's a very calm. He competes when he's at least in the back and he's walking to the stage, like, he's very calm, like, he's zenned out. But I, you know, mental note to myself, and, you know, he went out and performed, and he had a great fight, and, you know, that was a huge step up. And then it was the same way winning the title. He actually got even calmer. So it's seeing this progression of no wasted energy, dealing with the doubts, dealing with the mental demons, which everybody has, and you can reframe them. There's techniques, right? You go to your breath, you ground yourself with the breath. There's things that we can learn or we can teach as a coach, but it's really cool to see that. And at that level, like, I believe in my heart that that's what we're cultivating as a coach, more than physical qualities, is a nervous system that's adaptable, a nervous system that manages stress in the most efficient way. I think of it is wise action, right? Wise action to me is the opposite of reaction. So, you know, reaction is action without control, and wise action is action with control. It's a fine line, and a lot of people wouldn't necessarily see the difference, but you can see it. So we cultivate wise action. We cultivate the ability to not get pulled in a direction that we don't want to go. And that's something we can do in our normal lives, not getting jerked around by everything. So yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great story, and I'm so glad you shared that with us. I mean, people are asking if you have a book now, so maybe you need to start writing if you don't.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's interesting, right? Because that is the work, is gently letting go the past narratives that cause us to feel impulsive when someone triggers us and we become reactive, and then we, in the moment, we're not in control of ourselves. And I love the reframe of the wise action.
Yeah.
That's what you called it, right?
Yeah,
Wise action.
rather than non-action or non-reaction. I think wise action is a better word, and we all should be trying to cultivate that in our lives, so we're not just getting jerked around, right? And it's getting harder to be more in control because of social media. And look at it, like, we're connecting this way. It's a powerful tool. It's a really cool thing that we get to use, and we should be grateful to be alive right now. But with that also comes challenges that, like, we get yanked by social media and all of these things that just drag us around, and we don't. It's not a good place to be. We want to be in control. So
Yeah.
Or more in
Yeah,
control,
I mean,
right?
social media is a great opportunity to educate, enlighten, help save lives.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's part of why this is a very important, advocacy for me, to be able to talk about the intersection of sports and mental health.
Yeah.
As someone who just thought I was all about performance, realizing what I want to help the younger generation and our generation is, we can also facilitate, foster the emotional side of us, so that, yes, we can, when we get thrown out in, challenging situations where it feels sometimes like I'm at like war with myself, to be honest. I have a better way to cultivate what those like, in looking at them as like opportunities or lessons. In fact, actually, I had someone on recently, my buddy Mike, who struggled with addiction, and I loved how open and vulnerably he talks about his challenges, because he's like, if I could just write a book on mistakes, so other people could just go like, oh, cool, like,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. But like, I'm sure you see so many athletes who come in your door, they're so obsessed with perfection and getting the timing right, and doing the MMA moves correctly. And if we don't get it right, we want to like shame ourselves. So
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and I believe that the science supports this, is like, if we're working towards achieving a goal, it's this interesting balance between accountability to ourselves, and also like compassion and love if we don't hit our marks. It's a really nuanced balance that, you have to get it and push and grow, but you also have to be willing to say, like, today I'm gonna back off. And I don't think there's an exact science to that. That's something that we have to learn for ourselves. Is you can't just I'll do it tomorrow all the time, or you get nowhere. But if you beat yourself up constantly that you're not doing enough, you probably burn out. So it's, again, I go back to, if you're doing work on yourselves, if you're willing to look at yourself honestly, if you're looking to cultivate authenticity with self, it's going to be easier to do those things. You could bring that back to sports performance, right? A athlete that does, maybe they meditate, whatever tool they're using, is better at understanding when they need to back off and when they need to push. And that's hard to learn, right? As an athlete, again, as a human, especially if we've been driven to achieve, we beat ourselves up if we're not doing enough, and you could always do more. So I find that the greater a relationship we have with ourselves, the better we are at tuning into those things, right? We're our emotions, our feelings are actually guiding us, rather than just kind of jerking us around. So there's a lot of convergence, right? Like, what I find very interesting is, my background is sports performance, right? But then I've I've meditated for a long time. I've always been intrigued by Eastern philosophy and that. There's a ton of convergence when you look at elite performers and all of these things, which come back to presence, authenticity, vulnerability, right? Having community. These pieces that are like important to us as humans, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I knew you were going to be awesome when Donnie recommended you. Gosh, I mean, I know you're so busy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're such a busy guy and we couldn't get you on sooner. But thank you so much for the
yeah,
time and for what you're doing. Sugar's so lucky he gets you as a coach. I love that you did the mental note of going, God, he's super calm right now. Maybe I'll take this into consideration and it ended up like your intuition was so spot on. So thank you for sharing your story, for sharing Sugar's story, and good luck in Arizona.
yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you and having me on, and keep doing what you're doing. You're doing some good work, great work, and yeah, it's cool. Great to connect.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks for jumping on. Bye, Brandon.